he's right about the pucker factor, Pete, because you're down there on the goal line virtually on 3 separate possessions, like you and I said yesterday, Pete. Yep. We're not talking 3 downs. We're saying 3 separate possessions. You're inside the 10, and on 2 of those, you're inside the 5, and you can't cross the goal line. So they ended up having to go for it on the 4th down one time. And then, like he said, because of the pucker factor, they said, screw this. Let's just get some field goals. No, you're on the road. You have to score. You can't just get field goals. I think that was a mistake Minnesota made, Pete.
And Dan Campbell, John, he'll go for it. It doesn't really always even matter where on the field they are that he's going to go for it on 4th down, because they've gotten so comfortable with doing that, right? And the players love his confidence. They love to have that confidence. We all know that. And it's just amazing to me, just what he's been able to accomplish and how they built that team. He's done a magnificent job. There's a lot of coaches out there, John, that don't have jobs. So I'm going to segue into that, which is the NCAA's got a lot of really great coaches right now, I think. And if you look around, I mean, are some of them not just going to bounce around still in college football, but are they going to potentially be coaches in the NFL? A lot of openings already. You talked about it yesterday. Black, Monday came out. We added one more to the list as we were going on to the show yesterday, Jacksonville with Peterson. But you've got pro guys, of course. You've got Flores with the Vikings, the defensive coordinator. People love him. I'm the one guy who pushes back. It's not that I don't like him, John. I think he does a very good job. He does a lot of things to confuse offenses. But if you look a little closer at the Vikings defense, and I'll tell you, the game that we just saw, Detroit, with a lot of other people, 28 million other people watching that on TV, it's amazing, John, because when you look at what they've been able to accomplish and what they've done, and I'm talking about the defense on the Minnesota side, yeah, they've done a better job at times. But second half, the Vikings basically just said, all right, we're tired. We can't stop the pass, right? And Detroit put up 390 yards on the Vikings. And by the way, there were 8 other times this past year where they were over 300 yards against the Viking defense, 6 of which they were over 390 yards on the Vikings defense. So I don't know. Is Brian Flores the right guy? Maybe he is. I know Aaron Glenn and the defense for Detroit. By the way, they completely stuffed the Minnesota Vikings on their offense, right? Their offense was healthy. All their receivers were playing. The tight ends were playing. The running backs were playing. And yet, when you've got 11 guys on IR on the defensive side and you stuff the Vikings, I would say Aaron Glenn gets a lot of credit for what they've been able to accomplish. Ben Johnson, the offensive coach. Vrabel, we talked about him yesterday. Kellen Moore's another one. But how about Kirby Smart? Matt Campbell, who's at Iowa State, who a lot of people are thinking maybe he could jump to the NFL, John. Lincoln Riley at USC, maybe. A lot of people have talked about him. Sarkisian at Texas. What do you think? I think it's a lot closer now than it ever has been with college coaches having to do the same types of things as NFL coaches. They've got NIL, that's basically how much money do we have? We've got a cap on that, sort of, because it's whatever you were able to generate, right, from the collective, as they call it. And free agency, we call it the portal in college. It's really turned back into something where the NFL and the NCAA are pretty damn similar when it comes to football and football coaching and having one-year players. Look at Ohio State. Every year since they started, they got a new quarterback every year, right? Somebody who finally leaves somewhere else. This year it was Kansas State, and now the kids lighten it up, right? And it's just the way college football is. So is there somebody who stands out the most for you, John? Do you got to stick to the NFL if you're looking around for a new head coach?
Well, if Kirby Smart, the Georgia coach, Pete, would have done in last winter what he's about to do this winter, I'd say it would be him. Yeah. Because he's said, I'm going to go get 35 guys off of the portal. So he said, if you think you can play, put your name in now. So like you said, Pete, it's a combination. The head coach in college is a combination of general manager and head coach.
Mhm.
And in some cases, and you've named one of them in the past, Pete, which was Stanford.
And
They
Stanford.
basically picked a former Stanford player, Luck, to be their general manager, not
Yep.
their head football coach, but the general manager, because that's a real job now. There are going to be guys that are going to get that job. And I think Kirby Smart's about to find out that trying to coach and be that money guy off of the portal and everything else is an even bigger job than he thought. So if he's successful at it, great. But if he isn't, I think they'll have a general manager down there and maybe even a new coach, Pete, because they're not going to tolerate if he spends a whole bunch of money on the portal and alienates a bunch of kids that he's already recruited.
Yep. Yeah, it's a tough thing. The game is changing very rapidly, and it's but I think in most cases, John, maybe it is changing for the better in terms of the viewing. I mean, you could have an opinion on whether you should pay these kids or not, but you take a look at the viewership in college football, it's pretty amazing. I wanted to jump to our next one, which is NFL ratings. And you want to talk about viewership? 28.7 million people, John, were watching the Minnesota Vikings play the Detroit Lions. And in the second half, it wasn't even a game, and they still stuck around and were still watching. So they have all kinds of ways to sort of test all this stuff out. I find it amazing. How about this stat? 72 of the top 100 shows was NFL. I mean, it's amazing the dominance that they have created, and that's not just against sports, that's against everybody, right? Now, if you want to go sport to sport, we talked about this already, John, but November, the NBA was down 28% at ESPN. 28%. So the NBA is struggling a little bit. The NHL always has a bit of a struggle, of course. Major League Baseball is 162 games, so that's fatiguing as hell for people. But the NFL and throw in college football, the viewership is absolutely off the charts. And I mean, it's stunning just to see what's going on. And I think in college football, with the way they were able to create this new playoff system with the teams that they've got, I think they've done an outstanding job. We got some big games in front of us this week.
Well, Pete, I asked Grok, which is not an old teammate of Pete's, but instead it is Elon Musk's AI on Twitter. I asked Grok, okay, what was the viewership for the Christmas Day games for the NFL? 24.2 million viewers per game. It was the Chiefs Steelers and the Ravens Texans, both of them over 24 million. Now, what was the NBA's viewership? Well, let's see. NBA averaged 5.25 million viewers per game. And some of those games, Pete, were as little as, for instance, the Nuggets Suns was under 4 mil. It was only 3.8 million. So there ain't no doubt that you're right, and that the king of ratings is football, pro and then college, and hockey, baseball, pro volleyball probably outdraws the NBA, Pete. That's how bad the NBA is doing in terms of TV audience. People just don't care right now.
Yeah, it was actually a comical when LeBron got out there and he says, "Hey man, we own Christmas Day. You guys can't be here." And it's like, you don't own anything. and part of the problem is right there. He should point at himself, because these guys who do all of that load management have ruined the NBA. And I don't know, until they can actually figure it out, John, I don't think it gets any better. I think it only gets worse, and people will get more and more frustrated about the NBA and how they've reacted and how the commissioner has actually allowed all of this to happen. And that's a big problem. I mean, the NFL, sure, they've got their own problems here and there, but they don't have too big of a problem when you look at the fact that their ratings are just going up, 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 up. And it's absolutely incredible how well they're doing right now for that.
Yeah, that's why they can even overpay like they occasionally do, Pete.
Right.
Like when Netflix goes after a couple games and pays $100 million and things like that. How does that happen? Well, they know they're going to get payback on the people, just like they got payback for a horrible fight I mean, Tyson versus Jake Paul, that was a terrible fight.
Terrible.
But they got people to watch it, and some of those people probably had to become Netflix subscribers just to see it.